This edition of Tech Talk is brought to you in part by Telex, the interconnection company, owners and operators of 56 Marietta, the most network-rich co-location facility in the Southeast. Tag TV and Tag Radio. Technology now has a voice of innovation and information. Get it on www.tagtvonline.com. The shrinking economy and job losses seem to be the headlines on every nightly news. But when it comes to entrepreneurs and startups right here in Georgia, the news is good and it's getting better. That's right. In a just-released, highly respected national ranking, the Kaufman Index of Entrepreneurial Activity shows Georgia is home to 590 entrepreneurs per every 100,000 adults. The significance of this ranking may not be obvious. That is, until you consider Georgia has moved in the index of entrepreneurial activity from third in 2007 to number 1 in 2009. Why the big interest in tech startup activity? Well, in this year already, small businesses with fewer than 20 employees have invested $354 million in locations and expansions. Greetings, everyone. It's Tuesday, July 7, 2009, and this is Tech Talk with Technology Association of Georgia President Tino. For the last few editions of the Tech Talk, the focus has been on startups and entrepreneurial CEOs finding the money they need to make things happen. On today's Tech Talk, we go beyond the startup's need for early-stage funding, past the importance of small businesses continuing to flourish in our state regardless of economic conditions, to the very center of early-stage capital, the venture capital community itself, as Tino speaks with Matthew Chagan. Matthew is Vice President of Trident Capital, and he is coming into the Tech Talk live from his offices in Palo Alto, California. Matt joined Trident in 2007 and is actively involved with several Trident portfolio companies. Prior to Trident, he was a VP at SVB Alliant, Silicon Valley Bank investment banking arm, and a director of finance at a WiMAX systems company, Soma Networks, and as an associate in Bank of America Securities Technology Investment Banking Group. Tino goes looking for a West Coast perspective as today's Tech Talk continues, as we go into the entrepreneurial and the money needed to make things happen for the next big success in Georgia, as Tino speaks with Trident Capital Vice President and long-term VC executive Matt Chagan.
Matt, thanks for joining me on Tech Talk.
My pleasure, Tino. Thanks for having me.
Well, all the way out in California here, and we're glad that you're taking an interest, and you've been real responsive to us here in Georgia, and we appreciate that. So why don't we jump in? And I think, obviously everybody's looking at the economy, and we hear and see, and we certainly our entrepreneurs feel the pinch in respect to having dollars available. So what have you and Trident done to adjust your thinking in respect to the current economic situation?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, we've been very proactive in helping our companies think about how best to handle the current environment and making sure that they stay financially healthy and have the capital that they need to make it through the current environment. The guidance we have given is that they should plan that the market for venture capital is going to be at best very difficult, and at worst unavailable through Q2 of 2010. Whether that happens to be the case or not, that's what we're saying everybody should have as far as an expectation, and that they should have a plan for getting through to Q2 without outside capital, even if that means making deep cuts in order to bring the burn rate of the company down. Now that being said, we also recognize that this is a great time for many of our portfolio companies to be aggressive about taking advantage of weakened competition and actually picking up market share in this kind of environment. We spent a lot of time working with portfolio companies, particularly the ones that are cash flow positive, but all of them, really thinking about M&A and consolidation. Overall, though, I think the best advice I could give venture-funded companies is really to make sure that you are in active discussions with your venture backers, and that you're on the same page and have similar expectations as far as your cash needs, and whether actually the venture firm has adequate reserves to fund this, or whether you as an executive, a CEO at a venture-backed company, are actually going to have to go out and find outside capital. Too often we find that dialogue is not there. And the last thing you really want to do in this kind of a market is come up with a surprise one way or another on that. So that's really probably the best guidance I would give for companies that are out there that are already venture backed.
And it sounds like your strategy to some degree, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, is to support the ones that you're funding currently first, so that you make sure they make it through. So on the flip side of that, are you thinking about investments in the environment? I would think that there's some good values out there. I hear our folks on occasion, the VCs, talk about good deals and what have you. So are there opportunities through Trident to find new investments at this point?
Yeah, absolutely. On the whole, we are actually very positive about making new investments in spite of the condition of the economy. I alluded to this before, but I think this is a great opportunity for strong companies with experienced management teams to go out and increase market share right now. And Trident has always put an emphasis on the quality of the management teams in which we invest, and so I think that this is a great opportunity for a lot of companies to go out there and thrive. We do take a more it's a more thoughtful approach of whether a company has a business plan that's conducive to succeeding in this kind of environment. I think you'll find that there are fewer companies getting funded that have very aggressive upfront spends without a real roadmap to profitability that's defined. I think you're finding a lot fewer of those companies getting successful backing. So the guidance that I would give for companies that are looking for new funding is be thoughtful about how you're going to turn not just aggressive revenue growth, but also profitability. I think people really want to see a roadmap there. They want to see management talk to getting to that cash flow break even and cash flow positive point, and having concrete steps to get there. So we really look for that. We push the teams that come in here asking for money, whether they've got a concrete plan to get there. But you're absolutely right. On the whole, I think that this is a great time for new investments, and actually, on the selfish side, I do think that there is that valuations have come down some, and we've been out there shopping and looking at picking up bargains of companies that several months ago would have been much more expensive for us, and so now we see a good buying opportunity.
So in Georgia, and I'm sure it's the case everywhere, there seems to be always a debate, or at least a discussion around what's the most important elements in respect to a firm like yours investing. And there's talk about talent, and there's talk about ideas, and obviously you need both. But talk about what you look for in a CEO, and how important is that in respect to the idea. And with that I mean, for example, if you have a serial entrepreneur that's been successful 2 or 3 times, would you lean towards maybe looking at that CEO prior to before you might go for a first-time CEO, even if the idea might not be quite as strong?
Yeah, that's a great question. The mantra at Trident has always been that we will take an A management team with a B idea over a B management, or sorry, B management team with an A idea.
Right.
And that's something that we really stand behind. Obviously, we look for an A in both, but,
right.
But if push, we would take the management team over the idea. I think that probably the top quality, I would say, is an ability to adapt. What I mean by that is that there are so many companies out there that started out headed in one direction and were forced to change their business model or product strategy because of something happening in the market or with a competitor. You look at a lot of the companies out there. I'll just use PayPal as an easy example. PayPal started off with a very different business model, the ability to do peer-to-peer money transfers over handheld devices using infrared on the devices, and we all know now that it's a significantly different business model there, and really I think that the success of the company is in large part the ability of management to see, hey, you know what, The infrared sensor market on handsets does not look like a really very viable opportunity. There were some significant changes in banking regulation, and they were able to turn on a dime and really take a different tact that took advantage of a changing market. There are so many CEOs that try and execute. The other thing I would say is that focus is important too. Not to jump around, but there are so many CEOs that try to execute on 3 or 4 opportunities and fail at executing on one opportunity. I think that when we get management teams that come in and pitch, I mentioned that the path to profitability is one, but the other one I would put in there is focus and the ability to really own in on the opportunities that are on the table and in the near term. So those 2 I would say would be the top.
Well, being out in Palo Alto, I am sure that you are not lacking in respect to companies that would love to be funded by you. So with that in mind, what's the perception from your firm, and I guess you could look more broadly if you say West Coast firms, but let's focus on yours because that's the one you know, I'm sure, the best, in respect to Georgia being a destination for venture capital investment?
The dirty secret of venture capital firms is that we love underserved markets. We love getting in on deals where we're the first institutional money in. You've got a disciplined management team that's managed to bootstrap a company to $10 million in revenues. These management teams are fantastic about being very frugal as far as the spending rates, quite frankly, because it's been friends and family money. And that for us is fantastic. And I would absolutely put Georgia in that bucket of an underserved market. You've got some great local firms out there, but quite frankly, not nearly the same level of competition for deals out there. And as a result, I think it yields much more disciplined management teams. So that's really part of the reason why firms like Trident, and there are others that are certainly active in the space. I know Summit's been out there and has done a couple of deals, and I believe TA's been out there as well. But why firms like us are willing to get on a plane and fly 6 hours to the other coast to be proactive in that market, and that's because there are great opportunities. Sometimes we can get them at better valuations than out in the Valley area because there's a little bit less competition, but more so. You just get really strong entrepreneurs that are disciplined with the growth of their company.
Time for one more question. In the past, I think there was a perception out there that if a company from Massachusetts or Texas or California, if a VC firm were to fund a company and maybe be the lead funder, that it would only be a matter of time before the company would get asked to move out to that area. Now with technology the way it is, and you talked about plane rides, et cetera, telepresence, you name it, there's different ways to stay connected. Is that lessened, or is that still something that would be felt of value? And that's something, I mean, in terms of moving a company if they're being funded.
I think that's an interesting point. We really do try and put the thought in up front as far as whether we're going to have to, whether there's, I guess, enough talent in a local market to really support a company in its growth pattern. That's as far as whether it's software engineers or whether it's sales folks or whether it's a C-level candidate. We've had a couple of companies that we've ended up bringing out of areas, some in kind of the Midwest. But Atlanta, I feel like is a great market as far as just having a lot of local talent and a lot of engineering talent. So I would say less so for a company like that. I think you're spot on in that if we get a management team that we think is solid, and we've got a core engineering team in the Atlanta area, you can backfill whether it's a head of sales or maybe even a CTO or chief scientist. You can backfill in that through telepresence. But no, I think you're right in that you can use technology and you can use the power of the internet to take a lot of the communication issues out of there and have and do a lot of the work virtually. So I think that the most significant thing for us is that we have in place early on a local management team that can be hands-on in helping the company grow through its early stages, though.
Well, thanks, Matt, for your time, and best wishes to you. Hopefully we'll get you out here again for a business launch competition or Venture Atlanta, but we know you're keeping your eye out for Georgia, which we appreciate, and best of luck to you.
Absolutely. My pleasure as always. Thanks, Tino.